For those of you that don't know me, my name is Sally Taggart, and about 10 years ago, I walked into the Center for Spiritual Living in Salt Lake. It wasn't in this location, and I've since had bounteous adventures and moved, and I live now in the Mesa area. I attend the New Vision Center in Scottsdale when I'm able, but I am overwhelmed with love, appreciation. So many people that I love. I have if you're related to me, would you please stand just briefly, like literally by blood or marriage? Not love yet, just love and marriage. There's a bunch of them. There's a bunch. And I have grandkids here and a nephew and daughter-in-laws and grandchildren and my husband. And then the ones that I get to choose to be in my family of love, and that's you. I have friends from Texas and a fake son from Texas, and and then all of you that I've known and loved here at the center for all these years. It is so wonderful to come home. It feels very much like home. So thank you for that. And I want to express gratitude to Reverend Cindy. I met your wonderful Reverend when Jerry and Chris and Craig and I met in Colorado to go to a Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden workshop. And Reverend Cindy and Bryn were there. And she found out that I was about to publish a book. My first publication, it's a children's book. And she read my little, I had a printed off on paper copy of it. And she said, "Oh, we'll have you speak after your book is published." And so here I am, and I'm sorry she's not here, but she's with her family in Las Vegas, and I'm sure that's wonderful. So the season, I think we could change the name of I had to give her a title for my talk, but I didn't really have one, so I just kind of made one up. But I think the real title would be, "Due to Divine Intervention, My Light Cannot Be Dimmed," which I might be stealing a little thunder from Reverend Cindy next week, but sorry, we didn't talk. So, it's the way it is. Our lights really cannot be dimmed. And I'm going to share with you just this little bit of a journey that I had. So I left Mesa I'll be getting home in about 19 days, and that'll be tomorrow. So I've been gone a long time, but my first adventure out was to go to Provo and to watch one of my grandsons, my very youngest grandson. He's 6 months old, while his family went on a wonderful cruise. And it was very tiring. But I've got to tell you what happened. I fell in love. I fell in love with this little boy. Oh my gosh. I would just look at his eyes, and isn't that how you fall in love? You start looking at people and you just feel it, okay? And we can't not. And it's that light that's given to all of us. We're all born with it. It's so bright in our little children. And you know what? They see it. And so he can roll over. He might be better now than he was even a week ago when I gave him back to his family. But he could roll from his back to his stomach, and then he'd bottom out because he wasn't sure how to get back the other way, and he'd sometimes get a little bit upset. His crunches were getting good in his arms, but so I had to roll him back and forth. And I got him this little mirror that he could look at. And I will tell you what, have you ever watched a little child when they find themselves in the mirror? They're like, "Whoa, there you are." And they sometimes put them on the back of car seats because they will be happy looking at themselves. Isn't that a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thing? We come with that kind of light. That is how, and it can't be dimmed. Now, you may not believe this. You might think, "Yeah, but I think mine's been dimmed," or maybe it went out. Or I met someone who's went out. No, it didn't. We can pick up kind of, I'm going to call it BS, belief systems, because that's what they're worth sometimes, that we believe are dimming our light. But the fact is, it never really dims. And when we release those beliefs, because beliefs are things we just made up and we repeated, and now we can change them. So if we picked up a negative belief that is making us believe our light is dim, we can release that and move on. So I enjoyed watching this little guy, and it really, really lighted up my heart. And then I realized, well, what happens if we have an on-dimming light? what is it that happens there? So Reverend Cindy had shared with me the book study y'all are doing, which is Michelle Obama's newer book called The Light We Carry. And so I read it, and there was an excerpt in this book that I really wanted to share with you. So when I prepare to speak, I really only speak about two things ever, really. One of them would be how awesome you are. And the other one is use the right words. Those are my two things. And so this book really talked about the light we all carry and how awesome we are. So this woman named Toni Morrison is a Nobel Prize winning author. I think she has passed. But she shares a little excerpt from here of when this woman, Toni, was on Oprah's show. And I'm going to read a little bit of it for you because she learned some really meaningful lessons in this. This is the question she asked. When a kid walks in the room, your child, or anybody else's child, she asked her audience that day, does your face light up? That's what they're looking for. When my children used to walk in the room when they were little, I continue her quote. This worked for me too, though. I looked to see if they'd buckled their trousers, or if their hair was combed, or if their socks were up. You think your affection and your deep love is on display because you're caring for them. It's not. When they see you, they see the critical face. What's wrong with me? How many of us can relate to that? In a side-by-side contest, the critical face will always win, leaving even a 4-year-old wondering what they're getting wrong, or a 14-year-old, or a 44-year-old. Many of us spend a lifetime registering the presence of critical faces around us, feeling bombarded by judgment, asking ourselves what we're getting wrong, and internalizing the answers in harmful ways that stay with us for life. All too often, we turn the critical gaze toward ourselves. She goes on to talk about the lessons she learned. With her kids, Morrison learned to dial back the judgment and instead to lead with something warmer, truer, and more immediate. A lit-up face, an unfettered sense of gladness, a recognition not of the combed hair or the pulled-up socks, but of the whole person who'd showed up before her, because, she said, is just as small as that, you see. It's not to say she raised boys who didn't know how to take care of themselves or who would always be looking for approval of others. It's quite the opposite, in fact. She was giving them a simple message of enoughness. She was validating the light, that unique bit of brightness inside each of them, literally showing them it was there, that it belonged to them, a power they could carry for themselves. How often do we just need a little reminder that that light is burning bright and permission to allow it to burn even brighter? So when a kid walks in the room, your child or anybody else's child, does your face light up? That's what they're looking for. So when I was writing my little children's book, it's the same message. And I'm going to do this as shameless plug. Is that what I get to do? Because I'm going to have them afterwards and you can get them signed and all that. But as I knew I wanted to write a book for about 15 years. This was a big, big deal this year for me to finally get it completed. But what I wanted to share about the book was some of you have heard of Louise Hay. She wrote You Can Heal Your Life, among many other books, and she started the publishing company Hay House, and many of you have probably read books from Hay House. She passed away a few years ago. She was a big influence on my life, not in that I met her. I never met her in person, but she traveled with me a lot because I'd listen to her book in my car. And she was the first one that introduced me to mirror work. And some of you maybe have never heard of mirror work. Well, she did it deliberately, and I will share just a little bit from the same book. She shares a story of a friend whose husband every day would get up, and the wife, it was his own little thing, but then his wife shared it with the world. So now everyone knows he'd get up, but he would get up in the morning, and when he saw himself in the mirror, he'd say, "Hey there." And she talked about what it, I was stunned it was in this book, because I thought I made that up. I mean, some of you thought the Fonz did, but hey. So here's the thing. As I was deciding what I wanted my book to be about, a phrase I use kept going through my head. This is a freebie for you. It's, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And so I went, well, what's your main thing? Well, I knew my main thing. My main thing is, how wonderful are you? That's it. That's the main thing. And I wanted that. And I had done an exercise on the back of the book. Some of you also may know Mary Morrissey. She did one of my recommendations in the back of the book. It meant the world to me. I did meet her when I was training with Bob Proctor several years ago in Florida. And she did a workshop with us. And while we did this workshop, you know how you do a workshop and you interact with each other. Well, she had us do this mingling thing. She prepared us in some way to do it, but I don't recall all of that. What I remember was we had to then spend 30 seconds or so and greet people as we walked around in the room, but never say a word. We had to only greet them with a pleasant greeting with our eyes and body. And it was quite an experience, and it was pretty easy to know when someone went, you know. But then she taught us another thing, and this stayed with me, and I have literally been practicing it for over 15 years. And I say practicing because sometimes I remember to do it, and sometimes I don't. But I actually do practice what I preach, and I preach what I practice, and I'm still practicing. The next thing she had us do, and she got us into a really quite an amazing state. She said, now I want you to go, and I want you, when you meet someone, I want you to look them in the eyes, and without saying anything, tell them I love you. You would not believe the power that was happening in that room to go and to see the light in someone else and just give them that love. No words. It's that namaste, right? That the light in me recognizes the light in you. It cannot be dimmed. We can believe it can, but it can't. But we can help or stoke the flames of those around us. And we do it with those simple little things. Acknowledging, looking at them. It's no accident children nurse about 8 inches from the face. This distance is eye contact. It bonds them. We bond when we do that. We connect in a beautiful way. Children come loving themselves. They come loving themselves. You put a kid in front of the mirror, it doesn't matter if they have spaghetti on their face. They are happy to see that person. And it was the vicious voices that I often heard when I approached the mirror that inspired me to write the book I wrote. Because I thought, what would happen? And I believe I came from a really loving family. But we just, you can get 29 great comments and one that's not. And that seems to be the one we pick up sometimes. And so I have no blame, but I'm just trying to clear some of these false beliefs that have not been serving me, that have been holding me back. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity. So I'm going to encourage you. Remember, no matter who it is you're greeting, it doesn't have to be when a child walks in the room. You know what? When it's the homeless person down the street, how long do you think since someone's actually been happy to see them, made eye contact with them, and sent them love? You don't have to say it. Experiment with it. Watch what happens. I taught some of my grandchildren this over the years, and one in particular, he would know if I looked at him. He was like, yep, she's sending me love. It even happens through the phone. As I close today, I would like to share a quote that I'm pretty sure many of you are probably familiar with. It's from our beloved Marianne Williamson. Let me get this stuff together so I can think straight. Our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? Your playing small does not serve the world. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. And as we let our light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. I invite you to join me in an affirmative prayer. There is one Almighty, known by many names, Source, the universe, God, the great I Am, omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, whose center is everywhere, whose circumference is nowhere, who is the brilliant light that illuminates all that is, all that ever has been, and all that ever will be. And I am one inside of that light. I am one bit of light formed from that light. And thus, as a child of light, I am heir to all that vast godness knows. And as I know this for myself, I know for all people, for all of us in this room, for all of those we meet, we are all glowing bits of godness, expressing beautifully and perfectly in this realm until we pass to the next. And for this brilliance, for this knowledge, for this knowing, I'm so grateful. So grateful that I can recognize the light in myself and the light in others, and remind myself to look myself in the eye and say, I see you. I see your light. You matter. You're my best friend. I will always be with you. And as I know that love and that light for myself, I know it for each of us. And I express these words and plant them in the law of love and invite us all to close with, and so it is.